Who are Kashmiri Pandits? You got a pretty good tutorial on that thing from Raj. So let me summarize. Kashmiri Pandits are the aborigines of Kashmir. We have a 5,000-year-old history, living history. This year is our 5,095 calendar year in Saptarishi Samvat. And we have a jantri that we follow. All of us take it wherever we go. Kashmiri Hindus are the only people in India that have a recorded history. Nobody else has recorded history that goes to 15, 16, 2,000 years. Raj Tarangni was an example of that. Kashmiri Hindus are also been the worst sufferer of genocide and ethnic cleansing ever since Islam came to Kashmir. We have had 7 major exoduses in Kashmir from 1339 till present. So briefly, Kashmir had Islamic rule from 1339 to 1820. And the first major exodus took place in 1405 when Sikandar Butshikan ordered the destruction of all our temples, our schools of learning, and major Katle-am, persecution of Hindus. 100,000 Hindus were killed, and there is a mass grave near Dal Lake. You saw the picture of Dal Lake? Near Ranawari in Srinagar. It's called Bhatta Mazar. That is the mass grave of Bhattas. It still exists there today. The second exodus took place in the reign of Ali Shah Chak and his dynasty. They were so brutal, they had made the persecution of Kashmiri Hindus as an official royal policy. 900 Hindus used to be killed every day. Third exodus took place under the Mughal rule. Jahangir and Aurangzeb were the worst. They forcefully would abduct Hindu girls and marry them off to Muslim boys. The situation was so bad that during Aurangzeb's reign, Kashmiri Pandits went to talk to Sikh Guru Tegh Bahadur Singh to save us. And he gave his life, and his head and his body is enshrined in Gurdwara Shishganj in Delhi. You can go and see that. The fourth exodus, the most brutal one, was during the Afghan rule from 1750 to 1820. The Hindus had to pay jizya, tax, and they were made to flee out of Kashmir to other parts of India. You have Nehrus and all those guys, they left Kashmir during the Afghan rule. And the women and girls were kidnapped and sold as slaves in the markets of Afghanistan. In 1820, Sikh rulers came in and the Dogra rulers came in, and it was easier for us until 1931. In 1931, the British wanted Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir to cede land in Gilgit and Baltistan to them as part of the great game that was going on between the British and the Soviet Union. And Maharaja refused. So they started getting the local Muslim people against the Maharaja. And obviously when that happens, who's going to be the sufferers? So we were the sufferers. They would pelt stones at us, kill us. So a lot of people left in 1931 in our own living memory. And then in 1947, as you know, the state was invaded by Pakistan, and there was a massive killing of Sikhs and Hindus. Sikhs were particularly targeted because of the war with the Afghans, and they used to be called Balwala Kafir. And thousands of women died, men died in Baramulla, in Muzaffarabad, and other parts where the raiders were there. More recently, in 1986 to present, in 1986, on February 21st, under the leadership of Mufti Muhammad Sayyid and Jamaat Islami, They destroyed 40 Hindu temples, 1,500 houses were looted, 300 Hindu houses were set ablaze. And that thing continued up to 1989 when leading community activists from both Muslim and Hindu communities were targeted. Like, for example, Professor Mushir al-Haq, a very popular vice-chancellor of Jammu and Kashmir University, was gunned down. And so was Muhammad Gujjar, who was the recipient of Padma Bhushan. He was gunned down, along with many Hindu academics, activists, and doctors. And this was done to sow panic, fear, and helplessness among the people. In 1990, that's the worst thing that happened in 1990 is that 400,000 people were forced to flee Kashmir on the 19th of January, when all mosques throughout the valley played threatening audio tapes. Threatening posters were posted on Hindu houses. Hindus were given 24 hours to leave Kashmir, die or convert to Islam. Hindus hid their female folk in their houses, and the poison was ready for them to take to die. We had done that thing for hundreds of years. We knew what to do. And so I remember the Pakistani raiders were 10 miles from my house, and we were all getting ready to be killed, and whole family started, leaving the home. And the next day, the Indian Army came in, and they drove them out to the line of control eventually. So what is the situation today? That we have become refugees in our own country. We are now spread throughout the world. 1,500 Hindus had been killed, thousands of homes looted, burnt, and illegally occupied. And there was a campaign of threats, warnings to the Hindus living in the valley. And these were the threats they were giving us. If you want to stay in Kashmir, you'll have to say Allahu Akbar. We want Kashmir with the Kashmiri Hindu women, but without their men. Either die, convert, or leave. What do we want here? Rule of Sharia, Nizam-e-Mustafa. And these were the posters they would go and put in our homes in Kashmir, and this is from Allah Tigers. Muslims awake, all infidels vanish, jihad is approaching. This is from J&K Muslim Commando Force that would say that leave Kashmir in 1 month, otherwise danger to life and family. Threats were also published in newspapers. Al-Safa is a very popular newspaper in Urdu, and Hizbul Mujahideen in 1990s posted this thing. The aim of the present struggle is the supremacy of Islam in Kashmir in all walks of life, nothing else. Anyone who puts up any hurdle in our way will be annihilated. And they did attack not only the Hindus, but also Muslims, secular Muslims, educated Muslims who did not agree with their philosophy. And Kashmiri Pandits responsible for any jurors against the Muslims leave the valley within 2 days. So this created a sense of fear and helplessness among Kashmiri Hindus, and the 400,000 people left within 2-3 days and becoming refugees in their own country. So here is an example. I found this thing from my talk in 1992. So the population ends in 1991. And this is how the genocide and ethnic cleansing of Hindus in Kashmir had been continued even after 1947. We were close to 15% of the population at that time, close to 1 million, 900,000 million. By 1981, we were down to about 500,000. And by 1990, there's hardly right now less than 3,000 Hindus are remaining in the valley. And you may say, why? Why was this decrease even though Jammu and Kashmir was part of India, right? Well, what was going on? Well, Jammu and Kashmir had a special status of Article 370, right? They could do whatever they wanted. The accession was only for defense, communication, and foreign affairs. So I'll give you a personal example. I was in 1959, 16 years old. So I applied for a scholarship for engineering. And the government gave you a scholarship to study abroad. In India, the problem was we didn't have any engineering school at that time in the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir. So I go for an interview, and there is a gentleman called Aga Askar. He interviewed me. I will never forget his name. And he looks at me, he says, son, you have a really great academic credentials. You're also very active in debates. You're NCC senior, under officer, blah, blah, blah. But there's only one problem. That problem is that you're a Hindu. I'll tell you, all the jobs, all the scholarships in Kashmir is for Muslims. You're a Hindu, you go to India, you have a whole land there, and you can make a good life there. Here, there is no future. So I go back home, tell my father, and my father tells me, he says, oh, don't worry about it. Aga Askar is well-known Tosfi. In Kashmiri, Tosfi means communal guy, right? And don't worry about it. This has been happening. Just forget it. I said, no, I'm never going to come back here. I'm never going to study here. I'm never going to work in Kashmir. And 30 years later, what happened to them? They were all thrown out, this time violently. So let me give you a timeline for insurgents in Kashmir to get a proper perspective of what's going on in Kashmir. Okay. In 1947, Pakistan tribesmen led by General Akbar Khan of Pakistan Army attacked Kashmir. Okay. And I'm not going to go into details. I'm sure my other speakers are going to talk about. So India comes in and drives out the people to the line of control. In 1948, India approaches the United Nations, hey, help us because Pakistan attacked us, ask them to take their forces out. Well, nothing happened of that. In 1965, Pakistan Army attacks India to capture Kashmir because in 1962, India was defeated by Chinese, and we were really very weak. So Pakistan thought, well, this is the time to go and attack India and grab Kashmir. Well, they got beat. Didn't happen. In 1971, Pakistan again attacks India. We were, at that time, economically weak in 1971. And India rose to the occasion, and they basically liberated Pakistan, divided Pakistan into Bangladesh, and they signed the Shimla Agreement. But after that, the Pakistanis continued doing what they had to do. 1988, Al-Qaeda was founded by Osama bin Laden. In 1989, Soviet-Afghan-Taliban war ends with Soviet withdrawal. And Pakistan launches Operation Tupac, which was to give covert support to jihadists in Kashmir. See, what happened in '89 is that because the victory of Taliban over the Soviet Union, there was a sense in Kashmir that we can defeat India too. Because the Islam defeated Soviet Union, we can defeat India here in Kashmir. And so in '89, Hizbul Mujahideen was founded by Pakistan military as an arm of Jamaat Islami. And in '89, also Mufti Muhammad Sayyid was appointed Home Minister, who made sure that all the security apparatus in Kashmir was inoperative. And in 1990, what happens is 400,000 Hindu Pandits are forced to leave in an orgy of rape, murder. And the religious sadism was at its peak. People were killed by hanging, branding with hot irons, lynching, all kinds of nasty things they did to people when they were killing. Now, there is a book by Rajat Mitra of The Infidel Next Door, and this is some of the things that he found out from the stone throwers. Do you know why we did it? Because it would be too much stress to pull the trigger 400,000 times. This is what the killers who are in the prison, he interviewed them. We would have done that at last resort, but it was not necessary. It would have been much simpler if we could have made them run away saying that we are eyeing their women. We used slogans to terrorize them. We knew they would die of heat stroke, illness, and whatnot. And many other things. I don't have time to. These are some of the pictures of the dead bodies of the Hindus. These are just little kids about 2 or 3 years old who were murdered in a camp in Vandahama. And there were deaths due to the heat stroke, snake bites in the refugee camps. Another 2,500 people died. We had destruction of homes and all that thing. But this is my 2 more slides here. So who's responsible for all this thing in Kashmir? In my opinion, it's Ali Shah Jilani, the leader of Hurriyat and Jamaat Islami, and who gave this interview with Asha Khosa on August 25. I have a 3-point target. First, to impose Islamic Nizam in Kashmir. Islam should govern our political thought, socio-economic plans, culture, and the ongoing movement. The creed, socialism, and secularism should not touch our lives. This is what he said. So the present situation in Kashmir is this. This is from the book K-File by Bashir Assad. This was just published in 2019. I recommend that you read it. And so what he's saying is that after the ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Hindus, the security situation has worsened. The state has been operating as a semi-autonomous Islamic state. Since '89, Operation Tupac by Pakistan has resulted in 40,000 deaths of Kashmiri Muslim boys. And also, they have also suffered. And a lot of it has been because of the infighting between the various factions. You've got Hizbul Mujahideen, you have Jaish-e-Mohammed, you have all kinds of these outfits that are fighting for turf within each other, and Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front. The problem in Kashmir is 4 M's: Mullah, Mosque, Madrasa. Children are taught jihad and hate Hindus. And India, death is celebrated. And then Sunni Muslim families of Jilanis, Bukharis, and Andrabis, which are only 3% of the population, control 35% of all the jobs in Kashmir. So how can you help? Write to congressmen, senators, and speak out against the jihad in Kashmir and support recent actions of India to abrogate Article 370 and 35A. Thank you. Stand up against jihad in Kashmir.